Okay, so this is a little introduction to my waste oil burner that I use to heat my workshop. So the system's quite a simple one. So we've got an output there to the outside of the garage here, and we've got a standard size box here, so it's not that big. You can sort of see the size of it there. It's in my hand, it's not that big. And then we have a controller over here, which I've designed here. Okay, so in terms of an overview, it's a drip feed system. And what we have for feed is something called a peristaltic pump, which is basically a step motor which turns these bearings, and as it does so, it pushes a metered amount of oil up. It goes up through here, through this little sight glass, drips in into a copper tube that runs down the inside of this pipe, inside to the boiler there. And on here we've just got a 12-volt blower fan, the little adapter to feed the air through. Okay, so the oil itself comes from this 2 litre catch can here. So this is the feed into the system. And then on the outside of the building, outside, to save me getting muck and dirt everywhere, there's a 25 litre of oil, and I use this little pump here to suck fresh oil up, fill this guy up, bring the sight gauge up, and it's ready to go. In terms of inside, we've got a standard sort of hinge there, and inside all that happens is the oil just drops in, it comes out the bottom of this tube, doesn't go anywhere, just comes in the bottom here and just falls onto the plate. Okay, and what I use in the bottom is some, they call it a ceramic wick, and that sits in there, and that acts as like an oil trap, and sort of lets it, stops it from blowing itself out. So in terms of from that, so this thing actually gets quite hot. It gets very, very hot actually, and it heats this room up. This sort of as an overall size, you can sort of see it's quite a large garage. But what happens is I also have a back boiler. So I have a water back boiler here, which also goes into this, which then goes into this flue surround tube, and then comes out here, and then it goes through copper piping down, around through this copper pipe, out into the radiator in the other room, back from the radiator through this little 12-volt pump, up through this hose. I need to make these out of copper yet, into the bottom of the back boiler here, and then back up and through all of the systems. So you get a nice closed water feed. And then on the other side, in the machining shop, you have essentially a car radiator, because it was the most efficient thing I could find to do, with the speed controller on it, so I can just set the speed. And then this obviously blows, you've got a fan behind you, just a car fan behind here, again 12-volt system, and you get lovely hot air out of here, and it does actually heat this entire room up. So in terms of the controller itself, so we've got a flue temperature sensor here, okay, and because I'm working in that room, I can't tell obviously if I get a flame out or anything I need to worry about. So the flue controller is quite good. What happens if we press start, it will then sit here waiting for ignition. It detects ignition through temperature, so when it reaches 60 degrees centigrade of flame temperature, which is obviously quite quickly, it then brings your air and your oil on, okay, to like a warm-up stage, because you can't flood these things. Too much oil at the start, when the plate's not hot enough in there, it will just flood and die. And once it gets to about 400 degrees of flue temperature, it then switches over to idle, okay, and at idle it burns probably, I don't know, I would like to say about 300 millilitres, 400 millilitres an hour, something like that. It depends how hot you have it. I mean, I have this thing running at sort of 600 or 700 degrees flue temperature, so I really do get the heat out of it, because with the water taking the heat away, it does get through some oil. I also have this light here. So if I put this into manual mode actually, and go to manual mode, okay, you can hear the oil going and the air going. If I turn the air right down, so the air is 0, and that's the oil turning, and you'll see the pump actually turning there. So you can see the peristaltic pump turning, and what it's doing is it's then dripping the oil through. Okay, and that's set to quite fast, that's set to 44. So if I bring that down to about 30%, you'll see that it then just drips very slowly. Drip, drip, drip. Okay, and that's that. So in here, we have basically an Arduino, and loads of bits and bobs in here. So we've got the pump driver, we've got the power supply unit itself, the fuse board for the power supply, we've got the Arduino itself, we've got all of the stuff for the display. It's a bit of a mess, but it's all secured in there, so it's all sort of buttoned away nicely. We've got this light, and I've got one in that room as well. Once it's up and running, if the temperature goes out by more than 50 degrees of the target flue temperature, which you set once it's up and running, then this light will start to flash, and that's so that I know, look, I need to go and look at my heater. It's overheating, or it's underheating, or it's run out of oil. Something's gone on that I need to go and look at, and that's quite a bright. I mean, I wonder if I might be able to get it flashing. No, I can't get it flashing without actually running it. So that's the control system. In terms of lighting it, I just pop in some wick. I have a little thing here of, this is just turpentine substitute, terp substitute. Just spray a bit of that in there, blowtorch, and it's away, and that's it, and then it's lit. I did have stove rope on here, but I found that it doesn't actually emit any smoke, and I also have a CO monitor up there as well, just in case, you know, to keep my eye on things. So yeah, so I mean, it's a simple burner, it's a small burner, but it's quite, you know, my interest is electronics, so I've probably made it overcomplicated. I could probably just do with just a little drip tap and so on, like others have done, but I thought, no, I want to make this thing really good and really reliable. And as I say, also on shutdown is quite important. So once it's running, if it's in manual mode, I can press stop, and then the fans go high, oil goes off until the temperature drops below about 30 degrees or 40 degrees of flue temperature, and then it shuts the fans down and turns everything off out there. So it automatically will turn off the oil and then run down. So I haven't got to stand there and wait for it to cool down. I can just press stop and walk away, knowing that it will then eventually shut down. So yeah, so it's pretty good. It works really well. I've been using it for about 3 months now. As I say, we're now getting into winter, so it's going to be the first time I can actually properly test it in anger. In terms of burning, I will do a video on it running, but I can tell you now there is no smoke. I mean, I'm in a built-up area, and there is no smoke whatsoever. You know, I was very conscious of the neighbours and so on, and there are no fumes at all because it burns that hot. So yeah, it's really good. But I say that will be sort of a part 2 video. Cheers.